morning and welcome to TMS Book Club with me, Sewela Langeni from Book Circle Capital. We're an independent bookshop that focuses on African literature. And today I'm super excited to talk to Oupa Segalwe, a media and communication professional and now author of this new book, Lucas Mangope A Life. Good morning and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Now, Oupa, in the book, you examine the public and private life of this traditional leader-cum-elected politician. Give us a little bit of background on how this book came about.
So, Lucas Mangope and I are from the same village.
Yes.
In Zeras, in the Northwest Province. And growing up there, I was a bit confused about the kind of stuff I heard around the community about him.
Yeah.
In my own household, this is now around about 1994, when everything was, about to change in the country. In my own household, he was spoken of in glowing terms that he had brought a lot of infrastructure development to Bophuthatswana. He had brought about a vibrant economy which created a lot of jobs, and there was industry and all of that. But in the streets, the message was different in that people were saying he was part of the people who were trying to keep the manacles on when everybody else was trying to break free from apartheid. So I grew up with that kind of confusion, and later on in life, as an adult now, I noticed that this was a story that was worth telling, but surprisingly there wasn't a lot of literature around him specifically. Of course there were books here and there about other things and him inserted there
mentioned
somewhere, but there wasn't a dedicated body of work that focused on his life story. And at that point, that's when I started contemplating putting together a book of this nature.
And I like that because there's almost like an erasure of some people in history. We seem to see just books about certain leaders, and you were then intentional about just having a book about Lucas Mangope. And beyond your own lens, why do you think it's important to have dedicated books about leaders that can sometimes maybe be forgotten from history?
I suppose it stems from the point you just made now. I've always felt that our political literature in the country tends to, focus more on those who were at the forefront of the liberation struggle to the exclusion of everybody else. And as a consumer of domestic literature, especially politics, I felt that more needs to be done to tell the story in its entirety, especially the story of transition from apartheid to democracy. And it shouldn't really be about whether the person was a hero or a villain.
And leave the readers to make up their own minds about that person. And I mean, from the book, I can see that it took you more than 10 years, and extensive research went into it, and you got an opportunity to talk to other well-known leaders like Bobo Molefe, Matthews Posa, F.W. de Klerk. Speak a little bit about the research process. Was it easy? Was it difficult? What are some of the stuff you were going through as you were gathering content for this book?
I suppose my experience is no different from that of any other author. It was frustrating at times, but my biggest regret is that I never got a chance to hear from the horse's mouth.
The man himself.
Yes, because by the time I got to sit down with him, it was already too late. He was frail, and his memory was failing him. And as such, I couldn't really draw anything from him. So I had to rely on secondary sources. Some of those people that you mentioned, and his family, of course, and those who served with him under Bophuthatswana, but also a lot of, documentary or documented archives, records, and stuff like that. But sometimes it would be so difficult. This one time, I struggled to sit down with a source that I really felt I needed for this particular book, and it took 6 years for me to eventually get to sit down with the person. And that is precisely why the book took long to finalize, because I would get frustrated with all of that and then abandon it for 2 or so years, and revisit it again, read some of the old drafts and feel like, man, this is not bad.
I can keep going. What would make you to stay dedicated to it? What would be that thing after you had abandoned it sparks you to go back to it?
The story itself, I've always found Lucas Mangope's story intriguing and very fascinating. I mean, if you look at his politics, for instance, this is a person who has been deposed several times, and he would bounce back. He has been backstabbed. There have been heartbreaks in his political career, but he always soldiered on despite the odds stacked up against him, and despite the fact that he took a whole lot of wrong political decisions.
Yeah.
And even when you look into his personal life, there's a lot of drama there, a lot of violence, and all sorts of things. So I found that such a story could not be left untold.
And there's something you mentioned earlier, he meant different things to different people. Some people saw him as this great leader that did many things for the people of Bophuthatswana, while others saw him as a dictator, that perpetuated the status quo of the apartheid government as a homeland leader. What do you hope this book will contribute to his legacy?
Look, his legacy, as you rightfully say, is very contested. You find passionate arguments from those who identify with his kind of politics, his kind of leadership style and all of that. And then on the other hand, you find just as much passion in the arguments against what he stood for. And I'm just hoping that people who will read this book will draw important lessons in terms of leadership, in terms of being a listening kind of leader who reads the room, so to speak. I mean, when you look at what happened in '94, when everybody else was going this way and he was going the other way, and how it turned out for him. I don't want to say much in case I spoil it for people. But I think if you look at what has happened over the last 30 years of our democracy, some of the things that we have seen with certain families being influential over the government and benefiting, with how certain political parties don't practice internal democracy to the detriment of the organization. If you look at some of those things, had a book like this come much earlier, perhaps people could have drawn some lessons from it
and learned and avoided certain things. And I guess even we can learn a lot from the man himself. In a sense, a memoir, a biography also teaches lessons to the readers, and I suppose that's what you wanted to get, especially since it's somebody that comes from the same place as you are.
Exactly. A life story like this one, which tells Lucas Mangope's story from the womb to the tomb, so to speak, is such an ocean of knowledge that if you immerse yourself in it, there's quite a lot of important life lessons that you can draw from it, even in your personal capacity as an individual.
We thank you so much for such a contribution to the history of South Africa. It's definitely something that would add to the canons of our stories. And as Book Circle Capital, we always celebrate works like this because we're about celebrating African stories. You've heard it here on TMS Book Club. Thank you, Oupa, for being here. And thank you for watching. Books are available here at Book Circle Capital and good bookstores nationwide.